What's up everybody, and welcome to another Dofus Touch video for beginners. In this video, we will be talking about character builds and the thought process that goes into making the build work. Dofus Touch it's a huge game with a diverse cast of characters that can be built in more than one way, creating much variety even within the same class. Let's take a look at some numbers to get a sense of scale. Right off the bat, there's 15 classes, that means 15 builds, one for each. Let's say they can each be built in 3 different elements on average. That puts us at 45 builds, and this is just keeping it simple. Throw on top hybrid builds and variations. We are talking about hundreds of different builds, and I ain't gonna be making hundreds of videos. And this is why it can be a little bit hard to find information on builds in general. For example, I only play like 4 or 5 classes with just one variation each. And as you can see, that's only a tiny fraction of what can be done. And if you're going to make a guide, you gotta play that build. At least that's what I think. In all, you may be asking, but how do you know what build will be the right for your class? That's a great question, but I think we could get a little bit more specific and rather ask, what's the best build for me? Big difference that me part makes. There's a reason why everybody that plays Dofus doesn't just pick an Earth Yop, which is one of the hardest hitting classes in the game. So let's get started. Dofus character builds mainly revolve around the classic elements of life: fire, earth, air, and water. In this case, intelligence, strength, agility, and chance. But both of these terms can be used interchangeably when talking about builds. There is more, of course, to builds than just these 4 elements, but let's keep things simple for the sakes of the beginner video. And I know this can be super overwhelming to someone who is new, but like with any RPG, be it Final Fantasy, Pokemon, Dragon Quest, whatever, you just have to get a feel for what you like as you play. When you start a new game, you kind of just play it out and naturally gravitate towards your personal playstyle, and this is true here. And the big point of this video is just to get you started to start making your own decisions. So your character build is mainly identified by the particular element or elements by the spell it uses in combat. In addition to investing and distributing characteristic points, if your character is using fire spells, then you are a fire build. Pretty simple. Every time you gain a level, you will grow stronger by getting points to distribute and apply to your character, and here is where a lot of the customization happens. Every time you level, you will get 5 characteristic points, 1 spell point, and 5 points into your HP. This will be true all the way to level 200, so you will have a limited amount of points to distribute into your character. So if we open the characteristic screen and look at the stats, you will see that each element has a place where you can sink points into, and typically you want to sink points into the elements that correspond to the spells you want to use to boost their damage. You may have noticed these numbers up here. These are known as your characteristic caps. Depending on your class and element, they can be different. They pretty much tell you the threshold of when more points are needed to boost that stat. And these caps are going to vary by class and elemental path. And typically, they are always going to require more as you increase that stat. So let's talk numbers again. This is just a rule of thumb, but if you decide to build your character in one element, also known as a mono build, you want to invest until the cap becomes 4 to 1, meaning 4 characteristic points to 1 elemental stat. After that, the return you're getting when sinking that many points into it isn't that great. So what do you do with the rest of the points? Put them into your HP to bulk yourself up a bit. Or if your character revolves around AP or MP removal, put it into Wisdom to increase your chances to remove said AP and MP. But this will be up to you in the end. For hybrid builds or multi-elemental builds, you want to push them to 2 points to 1, or maybe push them as far as you can equally. We'll talk about more about hybrid builds in a bit, but there's a bit of sacrifice when it comes to making a hybrid character. Now let's talk about skill points. These are going to be used to level your spells. These go up to a maximum level of 6, and the more you level them, the more points they are going to take. In all, it takes about 15 skill points to take a spell all the way up to level 6. And in short, every 15 levels, you're going to be able to max out a spell pretty much. The important thing to keep in mind here is because these points are limited, you won't be able to level everything to 6. So you will have to play around with having spells at level 6, level 5, just to make the most out of your points. The mono build, or the single elemental build, will have a lot easier time to invest into spells, as it's going to be a lot more straightforward. Hybrid builds will have to be a little bit more selective, but ultimately level up what you find useful. It's good to plan ahead a little bit when it comes to spells. Open up the spell window and you're going to see all the spells your class has access to, and read them. See what they do and see if it's something that piques your interest and something that you want to save your points for. Because again, you're going to have a limited supply of spell points. Now let's talk about AP, MP, range, summons. These stats are a little bit more on the side of being hard stats, but can be increased. These stats carry a lot of weight to them and power, and they are mainly going to be boosted by your equipment. You will get an extra AP when you hit level 100 though. Ideally, you want to get as much as you can when it comes to these stats, which will get easier as you level and you start getting into higher level gear, and getting yourself into gear that are part of a set for the set bonus. Like after level 50 or 60, somewhere around that range, amulets start to give AP by default. Boots start to give MP by default. There will be a video on equipment, so we will leave that topic for another time. Because these stats are very powerful stats, there is a limit to them. AP, the maximum you can have is 12. MP, maximum is 6. Same with range and summons. So here are the basics of building out your character. Focusing on the element you want to use, wear equipment to further boost that element, and level the spells of that element. But that is just one side of the coin, and that's the easy side of builds. So let's keep moving. The other side is actually building something you enjoy playing and lines up with what you want to do in a fight. The elements don't really have a theme or defining attribute to them, except maybe earth. If your character has earth spells, that usually means that is the damage hard-hitting path for it. But a class built, say, in the water element is going to play so different from another water class. Again, this game has a ton of variety. And since we are talking about elements, let's go over their secondary effects. Some are going to be more useful than others. Let's start with strength. Strength is going to give you pods, pretty much useless in a fight, but if you want to carry a bunch of stuff around at once, strength is going to help you with that. Intelligence will give you a boost in heals. You don't necessarily have to be a healing class to take advantage of this, if you want to heal. If you have a weapon or a spell that instead of dealing damage, it restores, it's going to get boosted by this stat. Next up is agility. This is going to increase your lock and dodge potential and critical hits to an extent. This means that you will have a higher probability to keep an enemy next to you from moving away very easily, and being able to move away from enemies with ease. The critical hit part just means that you'll be getting critical hits more often. And lastly, chance. This is going to increase your prospecting, which is useless in a fight, but when it comes to drops, you will be increasing those chances of dropping items. Wisdom, while not an elemental stat, it is a stat that you can boost, and as mentioned, this one is going to increase your chances to remove AP and MP, as well as being able to prevent or parry the loss of AP and MP. But a more universal use for it is that it also increases how much XP you get at the end of the fight. I did make a video on XP and leveling and how that works. I talked a little bit about wisdom in there. If you're interested, or if you haven't seen that video yet, I would highly suggest you check it out. I will leave a link to it somewhere. And finally, the last stat you can boost is HP, which is pretty self-explanatory. With that being said, I am now going to show you how to break a class into its elements and into its playstyle based on what it wants to do by looking at its spells, and hopefully that will give you a bit of foresight when it comes to building out your character. If you've seen my previous beginner videos, you know me guys, and you know the channel is about teaching you the ins and outs of the game. So you have the tools to hold your own instead of following like a video all the time. Which is kind of ironic because I'm making videos and I want you to watch the videos, But like I said, I'm not going to be making like 20 videos on builds because I just can't. There's just too many. Plus, this is a living, breathing game, and chances are they're going to change their classes, they're going to change their spells, and yeah, I'm better off just teaching you the foundations. So y'all better pay attention. Alright, let's take the Sadida class. Let's say this class caught your attention. And this also happens to be a class I know very little about. So this will be the perfect example to break down and come up with different build ideas, which will most likely be where you find yourself, being new to the game. So let's start by looking at the pool of spells. So I just made a Sadida here just so we could go through the spells available to the class. So we're just going to click the little wand with the star icon to open up the spell menu. Alright, here we go. And we're just going to take a quick look at it. Right off the bat, I see Earth spell, Water spell, Fire spell. Let's see, and yeah, I'm not seeing any air or agility spells. So if you want to do like an agility Sadida, this is probably not going to be a good idea. Alright, so it looks like our choices are Earth, Chance, and Intelligence. Also, since we're on the subject of identifying spells, for the most part, these spells are color coded. So brown is going to be Earth, blue is going to be your Chance spell, your Water spell, and finally red is going to be your Fire spell, of course. And you might notice that there's a purple spell. We'll talk about those later. Also, these brown ones here, so you see how the outer is brown, but the inside is color coded. So brown, this darker brown means it's a summon. The color code inside means it has an affinity to a certain element. So the sacrifice doll has affinity to water or chance, and like this Unfadable doll has an affinity to intelligence. So that's another way to identify them. Gray or colorless, usually a non-damage spell. Here's an example. Instead of damage, it says restores, which pretty much means it heals. It's another brown summon spell. These yellow ones, I want to say they're more support type spells. They're similar to the colorless ones, but I think the colorless ones deal more with reducing AP and MP, or dealing with AP and MP. These yellow ones are more support. So pretty much with whatever build you go with, they are going to be useful. But we are not going to be talking about those. We're going to be focused more on the elements. Alright, so let's move on here. Let's start with Earth. That's the first one here. So let's go over Bramble. You see how it has the green text at the bottom? It's pretty much going to tell you what the spell wants to do. So let's go ahead and read it. Bramble inflicts physical damage on enemy. We're going to check out the levels on it, and if you decide to level this up, it looks like the range increases and the damage increases. So this looks like a vanilla type spell. Nothing too fancy, just straight up damage. Since it comes early on, since you get it pretty early on, it looks like it's going to be your kind of like bread and butter spell. Yeah. So just regular Earth hitting spell here. Let's see if we can find another Earth spell. Alright, Manifold Bramble's the next one. Again, we're going to check out the green text. Manifold Bramble can damage several players. Okay, so this is an AoE spell. We're going to check out the levels. Take it to level 6. It looks like damage increases. The AoE area increases, and yeah, and then the damage, so range, you're getting more range, you're getting more area of effect and more damage. But the catch here is you gotta keep in mind is it says right here, cast in a straight line only. So if you want to hit something directly, you're gonna have to be lined up to the enemy or to whatever you want to hit. And this also means that you have to be able to see the enemy with your character. This is something called line of sight. Pretty much it means if there's nothing blocking your way, you can cast your spell on them. So this might be a little bit annoying. You might have to position yourself to hit enemies directly, but it is an AoE spell, so you don't have to be lined up directly. You could probably hit them with the fall off of your spell. I think there's like a 10% reduction of damage every time, depending how far from the center an enemy is. So you gotta keep that in mind. But let's move on. Poison Wind. Alright, so there's a little bit of a poison spell here. Now let's check out the levels. Looks like the range goes up. The range goes up, the damage goes up, and your cooldown goes down. So you're not going to be able to do this every turn. At level 6, every 2 turns you can poison more. And we're just going to read the green text. Poison Wind kills one of the caster's dolls or trees and poisons all enemies in the area of effect for several turns. Okay, so this is another area of effect. So far we got 2 area of effect spells. Seems to be like a theme for the Earth build. You get an area of effect of 3 circles, and that's all the way up to level 6. Alright, so 3 Earth spells. That's what you have if you decide to go. Is it 3? 1, 2, 3. Oh no, it's 4. Aggressive Bramble. Skip that one. Aggressive Bramble. Let's see. Inflicts earth damage. Alright, so the range barely goes up. It is modifiable, so you're gonna be able to boost this with your gear. And again, cast in a straight line only, and it looks like it's not an AoE spell. So not only do you have to line up with where you want to hit, not only that, but also you gotta make sure there's nothing blocking your way. So if there's an obstacle of sorts, you kind of have to navigate around it, and that might leave you open. But look at that! Look at the damage. At level 6, 42, 47. You're gonna be hitting hard with this spell, and on top of that, you're gonna be stealing NP. So that's a little bit of icing on the cake. All right, so 4 spells in total for the Earth build, which is not too bad. Typically for a build, you want to be like at 3 spells minimum. 3 spells plus your weapon. I'll put you at 4. So 3 to 4 spells. In this case, the Sadida has 4 Earth spells plus the weapon. Not bad. You got some variety. Typically, like I mentioned before, Earth is usually the path with the hard-hitting spells, and that seems to be true here. And it's pretty straightforward. So, alright, let's move on. Let's go with Chance. Alright, so tier. Gotta check out what happens when you level this up. Our range goes up, and the damage goes up. So this looks like your standard Chance attacking spell you're gonna be using. The thing that really stands out for me here is it says it does not require line of sight. You do have to be lined up with your enemy, but the big upside on this is that it doesn't matter if there's something in your way. If there's an obstacle, an ally, or one of your summons, you're still going to be able to hit whatever you want to hit. So already, right off the bat, this seems like something where you want to stay away. You want to be keeping yourself hidden, because maybe the enemy is not going to be able to hit you in return. When you could hit them, but they won't be able to hit you, because you are not going to have any problems staying behind cover. Alright, Dolly Sacrifice. It's going to be your next chance spell. Alright, just really quick. Alright, so range is not going to increase if you level it. And the only thing that increases is the damage. Okay, so let's read the green text. Inflicts water damage on enemies. Steals water health from allies and summons. And heals nearby allies. The healing does not affect the Sadida or their summons. So this is a very interesting spell. You're kind of getting like a 2-for-1 deal. It's a spell that comes with offenses and defenses capabilities. It's pretty awesome. And this has a pretty high base damage on it already. 37 to 42 at level 6. That's almost as much as Aggressive Bramble? Yeah, it's hitting almost as much as Aggressive Bramble. And like the name implies, summons are going to be important for the healing aspect of it. But what makes it different from the Earth spell, the range looks like it's fixed, but you don't have to be in line with your target. So there's a little bit more flexibility compared to Aggressive Bramble. And on top of that, it's going to be a healing spell to help out your group. Obviously, it's not going to be used to heal you. That's what the green text says. It's going to be a great option. So I'm already thinking, okay, so if I go chance, I'm going to be away from the foray, away from where the fighting happens, because I don't need to be up close, because I could hit him with Tear, and I could hit enemies with Dolly Sacrifice, because I could angle the spell. I don't have to be in line. So it's going to be a lot easier to navigate the battlefield and to be able to hit things. But not only that, I could throw out a tree. Where's the tree spell? A tree spell, which at level 6, I imagine it has decent health. And I could use Dolly Sacrifice on it to heal my allies. So this looks like it's something like so far, like a keep away support kind of build. But I think we have one more. Yeah, we have one more spell, and this is a summon. And like I explained, we know this is a chance summon because it's blue. And we're just gonna read it once again. The doll lunges at enemies and explodes when it reaches the adjacent cell to it. And it has a little bit of range to it too. Yeah, so this is completely like a keep away build. The play pattern is definitely looking like it's something where I want to stay at range, hitting stuff at range while staying behind cover. But I could also throw out these summons as well, and they're going to run towards the enemies. So I could throw them out behind cover, which sounds pretty awesome. If you like that kind of playstyle, keep away playstyle, there you go. Chance build on the Sadida. Alright, so let's move on to the fire build. Fire spell, let's see. Wild Grass, 3 AP. So you only could cast this once per turn. What if you level it? It has a small area of effect, 2 health. It's going to be doing decent damage. And it's going to remove NP, which also is going to make it into a great utility spell. So this already, it looks similar to what the Earth build wants to do, hitting many things at once, but with NP removal. -3 NP is a lot of NP to be reducing. So already, if this is something that looks interesting to you, we know that Wisdom boosts your ability to reduce NP and AP, but in this case MP. So if you go Intelligence and this is a spell you want to use, maybe you want to invest in Wisdom to make it a lot more effective. But it's got long range and in a straight line again. In a straight line, but because it's AoE, you might get away with just hitting stuff with the fall of the spell. Alright, Paralyzing Poison. Alright, so we got another poison spell and Intelligence this time. Let's take a look at what you get when you level up the spell. So it goes up in range. And the cooldown goes down as well if you max this out. And since the poison lasts more than one turn, you're going to be able to stack it. So this looks like it's going to be sort of like a deterrent, maybe, for your enemies. I know that a lot of the AI whenever it comes to hurting themselves, might not attack you because they don't want to get hurt. Obviously, it depends on the type of monsters you fight, but this might be a way to reduce damage, even on enemies. They might not want to use all their AP because they're gonna get hurt. At higher levels, enemies do use up a lot of AP. But let's move on. Inflatable doll. That stands out to me because it's red. Red is fire. Red is intelligence. It's a summon. Summons an inflatable that increases the caster's MP and heals in an area of effect. Okay, so you pretty much got yourself a healing spell here. We know that intelligence is something that boosts heals, and I'm not exactly sure if your intelligence directly boosts the inflatable doll, but it's something that's innate to that element, so that's good. And on top of that, who knows, you might have to, the option to carry a healing weapon is open to you too, so you could heal with your weapon, healing with inflatable doll. And something that sticks out too is we quickly saw, where is it at? Soothing Bramble. So even though Soothing Bramble is not the color red, it should be, it's pretty much an intelligence spell because instead of doing damage, it's going to restore HP. And at level 6, 99 to 100 HP restored. That's a good amount of HP. You're gonna be like a little Forest Annie pretty much. The only thing is you're not gonna be healing as often with this. As we can see here. Alright, so you have to be in a straight line, so you have to be lined up with whatever you want to be healing. The range is good. The number of turns between casts is 4, so every 4 turns you're going to be able to heal a good amount. But that's okay because you're going to have the inflatable doll kind of supporting you with the heals. So far, alright, so let's look at the final spell here. Earthquake. It's got no range. Okay, interesting. Fire damage goes up. Cooldown goes up, but let's read it here. Earthquake causes damage to all enemies near the caster's trees. Reveals invisible enemies and attracts everybody but oneself. Okay, so I'm guessing the way the spell works is if you cast your tree, you want to have trees around the field, around the battlefield, and whenever you cast this, it's gonna do an AoE spell with the center being the tree, and that's gonna move things around and do damage. Okay, all right, so that could be interesting. You could probably set up a good playing field with this. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, you might be able to set up multiple trees. Maybe you could trigger multiple earthquakes at once. That sounds pretty awesome. So it's a little bit of a way to extend yourself, to extend that spell. Right off the bat, I'm thinking maybe you want to set up your enemies so they're not moving a whole lot. You want to lock them down with the wild grass. You want to set up trees around them, and because they're all in one spot or in one area, you want to hit them with the earthquake. So that comes into mind right off the bat. Like I said, I don't play the class, so somebody who's familiar with Sadidas, let us know if that's an option. But that's the kind of the gears that are turning into my head. But overall, it seems that the Fire Sadida, it's more on the support side of things. It's gonna be similar. It looks like it's a mix of what the Chance wants to do and what the Earth wants to do, but with more support. Another way you could think of Wildgrass is, since you're going to be removing MP from your enemies or for monsters, you want to slow them down. Maybe you want to slow them down for you and your teammates and just get rid of them before they get to you. You have access to a poison spell, which is, I see it as a deterrent. You have healing spell, 2 healing spells pretty much. The fire build definitely looks like it has a little bit more complexity, and to some that's going to be enough to go with the fire build. And lastly, let's go over this spell called Brush Fire. So multi-elemental spells are going to be identified by the color purple. In this case, this is a spell that hits fire and water, and I didn't include it when I was talking about the individual water and fire builds because you really need to be a hybrid build character, in this case a chance and intelligence character, to take full advantage of it. Otherwise, you are pretty much just working with half of the spell. The good thing is that if you do want to go fire and water, you have another spell available to you. The spell itself looks pretty standard, but you'll be using all your stats points when using it. And we will talk about why that's a big plus when I get to the hybrid section. Okay, so we have identified and made cases for 3 viable builds for the Sadida class. Now tell me, which was the best one? Hard to say, right? The chance build seems very team friendly. You're going to be fighting at a distance, keeping safe, and just supporting your teammates from afar because you don't have to worry about them getting in the way. And this is a summon class as well, so your summons won't be in the way either. On top of all this, your prospecting is probably going to be really high because of your chance stat, which means you are probably going to get some mad drops at the end of fights. The earth build looks awesome and it's going to be hitting really hard, but it's kind of straightforward. And I mean that literally. 2 of your spells only hit directly in front of you. So that might be a little bit annoying if you want to hit something and there's just something in the way. Like an obstacle, your allies, or your summons. So you might have to resort to using your AoE spell. But what happens when your allies or your summons are in the danger zone of that AoE spell? Are you going to be a jerk and hit them too? So this is something I would consider if you're going to be playing in a small playgroup or just by yourself. That way you don't have to worry about things getting in the way. But you know what? Because that AoE spell is so huge, this sounds like it would be a good build to just dispatch large groups of enemies. Make it easier to farm materials and maybe even raise a hunter, since you gotta kill so many enemies to level up that profession. Alright, so now the fire build. This one looks like it's very similar to the earth build, but it's more on the support side. Since you're intelligence, and we know that intelligence boosts heals, your Soothing Bramble spell is actually going to do a really great job at healing allies. That sounds pretty awesome, right? That makes you like a little forest Annie. Your AoE spell might not be as big as the earth one, but your version is going to reduce MP, meaning you're going to be slowing down enemies and hopefully kill them before they get to you and your teammates. And this analysis is just very simple, but since we have a big picture now, I want to ask again, which was the best build? It's still kind of hard to say, right? In the end, they are all going to deal damage. There's no question about it. It really comes out to how you want to do that damage, how you want to play. Do you want to play from afar with the chance build? Do you want to get a little bit rough and dirty with the earth build? Or you want to be taking turns to support your team with the fire build? There's really no right answer here other than which one sounds cool to you. So you think that's it, right? Just 3 builds for this class? Doesn't sound like a whole lot. And you're right. Let's talk about hybrids. Hybrids are builds that consist of 2 or more elements. For the Sadida class, that puts us at many more variations on top of just a simple 3. Chance fire, fire earth, earth chance, and that's not even scratching the surface with wisdom builds. We saw that the Sadida has MP removal spells, crit builds could be a potential here, power builds, maybe you want to build a Sadida in all 3 elements. So there's definitely a handful of choices here. But keeping things simple, that's at least 6 total variations for this one class. The plus side of hybrid builds is versatility, but the trade-off is damage. You see, when you go with a hybrid build, when you attack with an elemental attack, you are not using the stats of your secondary elements, which in turn kind of renders your investment of that secondary element kind of useless. Say you like the gameplay of what the chance build has to offer with the direct heals and support of the fire spells. When you attack with a water spell, the stats you put into intelligence are not taken into account at all. So whatever you invested into intelligence and whatever stats you're getting from your gear that's giving you intelligence kind of goes to waste. So you will never hit as hard as a build that's completely focused on one element. And this is where the mono build kind of shines a little bit because it's great if you're on a team and if you are a particular hitter of that element, where other characters can hit other elements. You know, you got somebody who hits fire, somebody who hits earth and air, and you happen to be the one who hits chance. So as a team, you have all those elements covered. But let's talk more about the positives of hybrid builds. Multiple elements are way harder to defend against. So if you are fighting a monster that has heavy resist to one element, hit him with another. And this is a really good thing, especially if you're playing solo. You know, you're covering a lot more options. And the chances of you just getting walled by a creature with high resistance are way lower. Take something like Scour Leaf. They usually have 100% resistance to their element. So if you're a chance build and you have to fight a water Scour Leaf, you're kind of in for a long fight. You are not going to be able to do any damage to it with your water spells. So that's just one example. But overall, the game kind of encourages hybrid builds by having equipment that give multiple stats, to having multi-elemental hit weapons, and even having the multiple elemental spells on some classes, like the Sadida's Brushfire. If you are actually a hybrid chance and fire build, you will be taking full advantage of both of those damage lines. And this puts us in a good segue to talk about power and damage. These are technically non-elemental stats, but are kind of universal, and they are going to boost your elemental stats. I'll explain, of course. So let's start with power. Power is going to boost all your characteristics at once. Sounds pretty awesome, right? But the downside of this huge benefit is that it translates to 80% potency of the actual stat. This means that if you have 1 power, you actually have 0.8 strength, 0.8 intelligence, 0.8 agility, and 0.8 chance, all at the same time. Another downside is that you will not be getting those secondary elemental effects that we went over with earlier. And you won't be getting initiative out of it either, which is the stat that determines who or what goes first in the turn order. In all, it's a powerful stat, but it does come with its sacrifices. Now let's talk about damage. Damage, like power, is going to do something similar. 1 damage is going to translate into 1 strength damage, 1 intelligence damage, 1 agility damage, and 1 chance damage. So these are a couple of stats you want to keep an eye out for when you gear up your hybrid build. Lastly, you open yourself up to a larger pool of spells, giving yourself more options to play around with. We saw that there's 3 spells with water. Add the 5 intro spells. Now you have 8 spells to play with. Plus the multi-elemental Brushfire, that's a total of 9 spells. And this is not to say that as a mono build class, you can't splash spells from another element into your repertoire. Let's go back to the Sadida, for example. Let's say you're an earth build or a chance build. You may want to consider to invest in the fire spell Wildgrass, not for the damage, but for just taking away MP from enemies. Whereas the fire build will use the spell to actually do damage to enemies, an earth build might be using the spell more for utility. There is so much you can do just by mixing and matching spells, and a lot of it's going to depend on the way you play. So don't worry so much about making the best build, more so making a build that is fun for you to use. A big part of Dofus is crafting and tuning your character to you and your playstyle. A lot of this you will figure out on your own, so have fun. And I know what some of you might be thinking, you didn't talk about the other Sadida spells like the summons. Like what the heck, like aren't those important too? Well yeah, of course they are, but this isn't a how to build your Sadida video. The Sadida class was just used as an example on how to have foresight by looking at the spells on what that particular elemental path wants to do. But if you're interested in breakdown of classes, similar to what we did with the Sadida class, yeah, that could be a doable thing. Just let me know in the comments. But the point I want to drive home is that if you approach your character and be a little bit analytical with it, you don't really need a guide or some internet guide telling you how to play. The cool thing about Dofus is how open and personal it can be. Else, again, everybody would just be Earth Eops, and where's the fun in that? And the best part about all of this is, if you don't like your build, you don't like how it turned out, maybe as you leveled up, you found yourself gravitated into another build, change it. Even though there is a little bit of commitment when it comes to building out your character, Dofus does let you experiment. So let's talk about resetting your character. First, you can reset totally for free in Incarnum, granted that you are below level 30. This is awesome because you can experiment with your character for a bit, just fresh out of the gate. Another way is by visiting the Doppel Temples. You can completely reset your stats once per character for 1 doubloon. This is also where you can reset individual spells. And depending on the spell level you want to reset, it's going to require a different amount of doubloons. The third way is to do the Odomai Island questline. Here, you're going to be able to reset both stats and spells. For spells, Odomai is going to send you to do the island dungeons, and this will vary depending on your level, and this will only be one spell per relic. So if you got a bunch of spells you want to reset, then you got to do the dungeons a bunch of times. For resetting characteristic points on the island, you will have to complete all the quests on the island on top of doing the corresponding dungeons for the relics. And lastly, you can purchase a magical orb from the shop with premium currency. With this, you are pretty much paying for convenience, but you get your reset instantly. Alright folks, let's wrap this up. I know it's been a pretty long video, but there's just a whole lot of information because builds is just a complex thing. I tried to simplify as much as I could, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed all that information. And get your gears going with possible build ideas. And like always, hit that sub button if you haven't already, smash that like button to help out the channel, and comment if you got something to add, something to say, especially if you are a Sadida player. Let me know what you thought of my breakdown. Hopefully I wasn't too off. And yeah, until next time, this is Challenger EX.